name's Kevin Kreider. I'm 40 years old, and I'm originally from Philadelphia. I landed in Philadelphia 2 days after my third birthday, July 14th. Weird story is that the adoption center legally made my birthday the lunar calendar, which is July, but because America follows solar calendar, my real birthday's August 20th. So technically on paper, I'm 40 right now, but I choose my other age, which is just a month younger, and a Leo. My family who was adopting me is from Philadelphia. Two Irish Catholic people who wanted to always adopt a Korean boy. Weird coming from Philadelphia, but that was just what their friends did and their social circles. It was very just seen as normal to adopt a Korean. No special story of being on a boat or escaping bullets or anything like that, but that's how I got here. My earliest childhood memory is actually on the plane coming to America. And I remember there was this lady with very, very short hair, and she was taking me to the bathroom. And then the next memory I have is going in the dark, coming to my home for the first time, and the smell of the soap and cleanliness of my new home, and a dog barking really loud. And I just remember being really scared at some point, being in my dad's arms. And so those were my first memories, actually, was just being on a plane, the excitement, and then just fear of like an unknown creature in this new home. My parents really didn't know how to speak to me about being A, different than other people, and B, being adopted. The conversation really came up when kids at school would point out things that I didn't notice, which was like, your hair's so dark. Why is it so dark? Why do you get so tan? Why do you look different than your mom? And then my mom would tell me, just tell them you're born that way. And then she didn't really understand what the kids were implying at, so I would always just say, well, it's because I was born that way. And then it got to a point where I was like, no, like, how come I don't look like this? And they just told me I was adopted, and I think at a certain age you start to comprehend things a little bit more. I think they waited till I was a little bit older so I could remember this and it could be a meaningful conversation. But I mean, this is the 80s, early 90s. There was no YouTube. Nobody taught you how to raise a kid. I mean, most people don't even know how to raise kids today, and there's plenty of information anywhere. Imagine having a newborn kid that's actually yours, which is my brother, and also having this little Korean adopted kid, 3 years old, thinking he knows how to speak English, but he doesn't, just running around, making your life a chaos. So there was a lot of chaos in the beginning years of my life. Kids are also brutal, like I remember this one kid going around the kindergarten room terrorizing all the minorities. Kids who were Spanish, he would be like, Andre, 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 Andre. Then he'd come to me and pull his eyes back and say, I'm Chinese, Ching Chang Chong. There were other kids, though, who were more curious. Like, there were some that were just saying, like, you get tan so fast, like, or you have, your hair so straight and black, why isn't it curly or anything? And so those questions made me question my identity growing up. And so I wanted to look like my peers. I wanted to fit in. I wanted that bully to stop making fun of me and terrorizing me and other kids. The moment that it took me to embrace my Korean heritage was very long in my process. I was definitely in my mid-20s, maybe even late 20s when I started to really try to embrace my Korean heritage. My parents tried to put Korean heritage into my life. Very funny, as white people do, like they thought I'd like to play the piano. I hated the piano. So they had a piano teacher who was Korean. So there was this thing where I was like, Koreans aren't cool if this is all that I can see in the world of this white world that I lived in. Then I'd see other Asian friends who weren't Korean, and so they were very stereotypical and were bullied and made fun of too, and were the nerds, right? And then I never saw anybody who I wanted to hang out with or emulated or just admired or even respected in that sense until I was in New York City and I was around more diversity. It didn't even take college at that time. It literally took getting out of Philadelphia, going to New York, modeling at the most racist store there was at the time called Abercrombie and Fitch. There was a period where they were hiring lots of Asian models because they were getting a lot of shit for saying two Wongs make a white and all those kinds of racist t-shirts. So then I got a message from a recruiter and I was like shocked. I was like, what do they want me for? But I'll take it. So then I go to the store and they're recruiting a ton of minorities. And in that was a handful of Asians. And they weren't actually Korean yet. They were Chinese, but they loved Korean culture. So they introduced me to K-Town more in New York City, the food. You know, you should go to Korea and start like modeling, because I was a model at the time, or try to get into the entertainment industry. My last trip was going to Korea on my tour in Asia, being a model, and that was when I got really curious about Korean culture, but it wasn't in a positive way in the beginning. The reason why it wasn't positive is because my experience going back to Korea, I experienced so much rejection here in America. I thought that going there, it would be open arms and accepting. I imagined like, what took you so long to get home, Taejin, you know? Instead, it was like I get off the bus and I'm like, excuse me, and like weird looks. Just people were like, you know, you need to learn Korean. You're not Korean, you know, and well, you need lighter skin and all this stuff. And I was just like, man, so much like telling me how to change myself. I didn't feel that warm welcome. And then it's also with the entertainment industry, I just thought because I was really Korean or wasn't Korean enough, I just felt like I was better off being in America, where I was like, well, I'm not Asian enough for a lot of people, but I'm not white at all. So I'm like, I might as well be here. But it wasn't really until maybe even 2019, 18, when K-pop and Crazy Rich Asians really exploded and people were so into Korean culture that I started to really embrace it more when I moved to Los Angeles, because the Korean culture and people here are just so plentiful. I was like, I gotta be able to hang out with at least Korean Americans. And then they taught me more Korean culture, how to show respect to elders. And then being on a TV show, learning about my identity really helped me too. So being on Bling Empire for 3 seasons, where I got to explore my identity and Korean culture, that made it a lot more cool and fun for me to learn more. I think the one thing that I loved about Bling Empire was being able to tell my story. The fact that the rest of the cast didn't really have too many stories to tell. So the producers really relied on me to share my stories to give it a lot more heart than just the flash and drama that people make up or say on TV just for drama's sake. You know, they really liked the idea that I actually had things that I wanted to share in the world. 3 things that were so important to me. 1, I wanted to share about sobriety, alcoholism, addiction, mental health. Like all of that was really important that I do that in that platform that I could. The next one was adoption. I think it's a very interesting, underserved community because there's not many of us, but we're clumped into this category of Asian still. And we don't really fit in that space too, a lot of times. And then the last one was actually self-acceptance and physical appearance. You know, I think my lowest time was actually being in Southeast Asia, trying to model and just feeling really lousy about the way I looked. And then seeing the different reactions that I had when I started to play with my appearances when I was growing up as a model, being very insecure with myself, and then seeing like doing, you know, the little eyelid glue things that girls do. Well, I did that back in 2009, and I gotta tell you, people looked at me so differently. I was booking jobs, girls wanted my number, and I found out it's because I didn't look Asian then. I looked more ambiguous. So there's a little bit of self-hatred going on there. I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I without this look anymore? So then going to Southeast Asia and then feeling that too, and then going there and just seeing how they treat white people, consciously or unconsciously. Just as an observer, I just saw there was definitely this unfair advantage that white people get still. It gave me a lot of self-hatred even more. Looking at myself, and I actually decided to go under the knife and change the way I looked to really what I looked like when I was doing that stuff with the eyelid and stuff. But I had so much self-hatred because I was like, why am I doing this to myself? But being in Southeast Asia still, with so much rejection back home, I felt this self-hatred of like, well, I'm not good enough still. So then when I'm on this show and I see other people feeling the same way as me by being around white people, by being around all this superficiality in Hollywood and wanting to change their face, I'm like, no, don't do what I did. Because you may wake up one day and regret it, just like I did, and hate that the fact that you did this. And so I think looking back on those experiences, though, I don't know if I would have been as open. I do think that there is a version of me that was just such an open book that I was so wanting to just help other people and just be an open book, be very transparent. But I do think there's a certain level that will bite you in the ass. Because then once people get to know you and they feel like they know everything about you, they know your vulnerabilities, I've seen it used against me too then. And I think that's where I made a mistake. I think after being burned, I think what keeps me wanting to be like frank going is just my belief, my faith, which is if you give back, you'll always receive. You know, God will take care of you. I used to be agnostic and atheist too, but when I started to change my beliefs and actually give back, that's when I started to see miracles really happen in my life and things started to happen for me. And I learned that giving back doesn't have to be monetarily. Because monetarily, yeah, sure, I wish I could. But I have a certain amount of resources for myself right now and money. If I can't donate with my money, I learned you can invest it with your time. So what makes me keep coming back to these things when I have time, when I have an interest, or maybe it's brought up by a friend, that keeps me doing it because I always know that I want to practice what I preach too, because I've always told the Asian community that you don't have to give back just with money, but you have to give it back with time then, and your experience in helping other people out. But if you can't do that, you're just a waste on this planet, and you're greedy. You know, it's like I just think we could do so much as a community that I just want to be an example of like, look, I could be doing something better on a Saturday at 3 p.m. You know what I mean? I really could. But I think me being here to share that message of if you don't have the money to help other people, at least you could do it with your time. I know for myself, I used to have a very scarce mindset. I don't have the time to help other people. I'm not good enough to help other people yet. But there's always somebody further along or further behind you that you could help. So I think if we just started to, instead of, being a crab mentality type of crowd, and start to help other people below us and above us, and the people above us to actually slingshot us up, we'd be a much better community. So it's almost like an example of the people who are higher up. It's like, help people in my level. Because I'm helping people down here slingshot up, and I have done it already. And I'm not saying this to flaunt, but it's this pure example of I've helped so many people start their careers and lives here that just a simple giving time, wisdom, introductions, bringing them to my social group has helped them immensely. But I still have not found that champion for me. So like, that's why I'm here. I could be doing something else. Everybody here could be doing something else. But we're the pure examples of stop being stingy with your time and your experience, give it back, and help other people out. My name's Kreider, and this is my Korean American story.